Has the rotation out of gold and into Bitcoin begun? Gold has had a crazy year. We all know this by now. Gold went above $4,000 per ounce. It went above a $30 trillion market cap. It's pulling back a little bit right now, but gold has had a crazy year. On the other hand, Bitcoin has had a decent year. It's up, but Bitcoin hasn't gone up as much as people would have expected. And because of this, people think that maybe gold is peaking and it's time for Bitcoin to shine and for gold to fall a little bit, for people to rotate out of gold and into Bitcoin. In this video, we're going to talk about why people think we could see this rotation. We're going to talk about what it could look like and the likelihood of it happening. Before we get into it, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube. Really appreciate your support. I'm also going to put a QR code down below for a Bitcoin tip. So if you want to support the channel, feel free to leave me a little tip. Now let's get into it. Gold has been ripping this year. There is no doubt about it. Let's go ahead and take a look at a chart of the gold price year to date. As you can see in this chart, gold has been moving up a lot higher. It broke above $4,000 per ounce, and a couple of weeks ago it hit a price of around $4,300 per ounce before falling down over the past couple of weeks. And we typically don't see gold move like this. Gold is up around 51% year to date currently. Typically gold is not this volatile, and I think a main reason that gold has moved up so much higher is because of this central bank buying. Really, we're seeing a lot of distrust in the dollar system and in government debt. So I think that with that, a lot of these governments, a lot of these countries are loading up on gold instead of US treasuries. Now looking at Bitcoin, Bitcoin has gone up this year, but I think that Bitcoin has underperformed people's expectations. Bitcoin is up around 24% year to date. If we look at a chart of the Bitcoin price, we could see that it's not quite as pretty as the gold price chart. And I think that people just thought with this Trump administration coming in, with all this demand that we've been seeing, that the Bitcoin price would be a lot higher. We still have a couple more months in this year, so we will see if Bitcoin can catch up to gold. But I would say generally it's been a little bit of a disappointing year for Bitcoin. So let's talk about this gold to Bitcoin rotation idea. Obviously gold has had a very good year, reaching above $4,000 per ounce. And with gold having such a great year, a lot of people are thinking that maybe gold is a bit overbought here and that maybe gold is near a peak, or maybe gold has hit its peak, and it may be time for gold investors to rotate into something else, maybe an underpriced asset in Bitcoin. And a major reason why people think this is because of what we saw with gold and Bitcoin in 2020. So let's go ahead and take a look at a chart comparing the gold price and the Bitcoin price from 2018 to present. As you can see in this chart, around 2020, we have gold, which is the gold line, and Bitcoin, which is the black line. Right when gold hit this peak above $2,000 in August of 2020, that's right when we saw Bitcoin start to take off. So in August of 2020, Bitcoin was around $12,000 a coin. And by April of 2021, Bitcoin ticked up to around $63,000 as gold was coming down. So people are thinking that this is a similar scenario with gold hitting $4,000, with Bitcoin being underpriced, and that maybe it's time for Bitcoin to shine and for gold to slow down a little bit. Now, this makes sense to me. Gold and silver have been ripping higher this year, and I think that's a good sign for Bitcoin, because really, Bitcoin is like gold and silver. This is a store value asset. It's in the same bucket, and I think that Bitcoin is the best item in that bucket. So maybe it's time for Bitcoin to play a little catch up here. And looking at gold, gold is sitting at a $28 trillion market cap. Bitcoin is only at a $2.3 trillion market cap. I see gold as overbought compared to Bitcoin, and it makes sense that we could see some gold investors rotating out of gold and into the underpriced asset in Bitcoin. I saw a cool chart on X, or a cool visual, that was showing the impact of a gold rotation into Bitcoin. I think that Bitcoin Magazine posted it. So let's go ahead and take a look at that visual. This kind of shows like what would happen if we saw a 1% rotation into Bitcoin from gold, or a 5% rotation in. For example, if we saw a 1% rotation from gold into Bitcoin, Bitcoin, that could bring the Bitcoin price to $134,000. If we saw a 5% rotation from gold into Bitcoin, it could bring the Bitcoin price above a $200,000 price, around $242,000. So gold is a much larger asset than Bitcoin, and if we even saw a 1% rotation out of gold and into Bitcoin, it could have a big impact on the Bitcoin price. Now, will this rotation actually happen? It makes sense to me that if gold is overbought and Bitcoin is underpriced, that some investors may decide to take their chips off of gold and put them on Bitcoin. But when we look at these larger gold investors like central banks, like countries, to me, it feels like these countries aren't quite comfortable with Bitcoin yet, and they're really moving into gold to escape the dollar, right? To escape US treasuries and government debt. And I don't know if these countries are going to be looking to sell this gold, right? I think they're looking for a store of value that they trust, and I think they might stay put there. So I think that it's going to take a while for central banks to really get comfortable with Bitcoin. Now, we have seen rumors that the US could sell some of their gold to buy Bitcoin. I don't know if these are just rumors or when this might happen. And if they did, it would probably be a small portion. But if something like this were to happen, it could incentivize other countries to do the same thing, especially if the Bitcoin price is rising. But until we really see these central banks moving out of gold, I don't really expect a big rotation from gold into Bitcoin. Now, one thing that may push investors out of gold and into assets like Bitcoin and stocks is liquidity rising. Over the past couple of years, we've been in a tighter liquidity environment. We haven't seen a ton of rate cuts. We've seen these tariffs, which have kind of shocked the markets, put a lot of fear in the markets, and we haven't seen the Fed doing QE. And because of this, I think that this has created a lot of gold demand as people are looking at a place to hide, and people really don't trust the US Treasuries market anymore. So gold has kind of been the place where a lot of investors have been running to. But with liquidity rising, with rate cuts, we just got one in September. We're about to get one tomorrow, and I'm going to do a live stream for the Fed meeting. So definitely tune into that. And then potentially QE coming up here, it may signal investors to shift out of gold, to shift out of this safe haven asset, and to shift into risk assets. Now, I don't think that Bitcoin is a risk asset, but a lot of people still treat it like one, right? They treat it like a stock. And with liquidity rising, with a little bit of fear leaving the markets, it may incentivize people to shift into Bitcoin, shift into equities. And we know that Bitcoin is a liquidity sponge. So if we do see QE, if we do see more rate cuts, I think that's going to be great for Bitcoin, and it could lead to people shifting out of gold. Now, I think a likely scenario is that maybe we don't see a large rotation out of gold and into Bitcoin, but we more see a large rotation out of the dollar, out of US treasuries, and into both of these assets. We just talked about how the Fed may be looking to end QT and moving towards QE. And if they do that, that's just going to lead to the US fiscal situation getting worse. And it's going to incentivize people to move into hard money. And I think that as people look to leave the US treasuries market, both Bitcoin and gold are going to be attractive. And this is what people are calling the debasement trade, right? And I made a video on the debasement trade. So if you want to check that out, it's on my channel. But this is basically this trade out of the dollar and into hard money, right? Because really, the dollar just continues to depreciate, the debt continues to go up, and US treasuries become less and less attractive. And there's a lot of US treasuries out there. So I think that this is more of a likely scenario that we see people rotating out of US treasuries and into both gold and Bitcoin. I think that Bitcoin will be the winner over the long term. And I think that over time, investors are going to be incentivized to move into Bitcoin because it's just the harder money, right? It's the better store of value asset. And gold holders are going to watch Bitcoin appreciate more than gold over the long term. Eventually, they'll flip and come over to Bitcoin. So I think that over time, Bitcoin demonetizes gold, but that is over a long-term time horizon. So we will just see when that happens. That's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope that we see some sort of rotation out of gold and into Bitcoin, because I don't hold any gold and I hold a lot of Bitcoin, but we will just have to see. If you didn't like and subscribe, please make sure to do that now. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon.